on the end of the 6 dimensions, only 2 more to go. So which one are we talking about today?
Jealous gods.
The jealous gods. So the jealous gods are also known as the fighting spirits. And this is a dimensional space of constant conquest and constant accumulation of power, a seeking of power over, and accumulation of power. So the jealous god realms are composed of gods that, I'll give you the Buddhist description of what a jealous god. First, if we ever encountered a jealous god, we would just think it was a god. That we wouldn't be able to make that distinction, because this being, first off, they can control all the elements. So they can raise an army of fire, an army of earth. They can they can manifest things to the elements. They can shapeshift. So they are, but as they physically appear, they're like 40 or 60 feet tall. They're immense. And they've got all these magical powers and all these weapons. Like, aside from causing the elements to bend to their will and being able to create an army, they have telekinetic abilities, so they can read your mind. Everything about a jealous god, if we encountered one, would make us drop to our knees and worship them. And if there are such a thing as these beings, there's a good chance that many of the Old Testament religions and many of the warring religions were founded off of a human encountering one of these beings, having like a direct encounter, and this being basically communicating with them, and you do these things, and it'll establish a relationship. But usually sacrifice is how a jealous god is fed. So you have people believing and sacrificing to the jealous god. That jealous god grows and grows and grows. The difference between a jealous god and a god is that the gods don't really have any interest in human struggles. They're immersed in celestial creations, celestial destructions, the creation and destruction on planetary and galactic size levels. They're not interested in the workings of ants on the planets that they are creating and destroying. With gods, you're dealing with this wide sweeping creative, cosmic creative force, and a highly impersonal thing. It's possible that through worshiping some of the gods, I'm not talking about jealous gods now, I'm talking about the highest dimension, which are the god realms, that there might be communication or connection between us and those celestial forces, but there's a good chance that it's more likely if we, through meditation, because what the God realm is crystallized I amness. It's pure oneness. So anybody who meditates a lot and calms their more negative emotions, calms all their karmas for the other dimensions, they will naturally resonate to the God dimension. And where these dimensions correspond to the chakras. So the lower dimensions are the lower chakras, and when you get into the God dimensions are up in here.
And you're talking about the God dimension, not the jealous God dimension.
Yeah, the jealous God dimension would probably be much more oriented toward the throat and the heart, because it's deeply, I would say, in the higher God realms are the third eye and the crown. These energy centers that reside in the body, they're in the chakra system, they're called wheels, because that's what the word chakra means, is it's a wheel. They're wheels of light. These are basically doorways into these dimensional spaces. These dimensions, the 6 dimensions, are vibrational frequencies. They're not like places that were created. They're literally frequency fields that are existing in the earth and around the earth, and taking birth in any of them is just a natural state and inclination of a being that's moving through. You're going to wind up in one of these 6 worlds, and even though 6 doesn't sound like that many, within each one, there are many, many worlds. Look how many worlds are contained within the animal dimension. And even though and the insects would fall into the animal dimension. So even though there's all these different kinds of, all these things occupying the same frequency space, they're in their own world. Their worlds meet, but they also, the ant can't communicate with the bird other than to be eaten by it. And that's these dimensions, they interact. The human, we are a mix of the other 5 dimensions, so we experience aspects of all the other 5. That's why the human dimension has so much potential for evolution, is because we can synthesize and rise above these other spaces. Once you're in the other spaces, it's very hard to get out till your inertia runs out, and so your inertia running out is what compels you into another one of the spaces, as opposed to being able to navigate through it. In the jealous God space, once you're in a space of constant conquest and struggle and power, the quest for power over others, now you can see how much that runs the human dimension. The jealous God realm, both on Wall Street and in Main Street and in Warriors, you have all frequencies resonating with the jealous God dimension. So we have and another place that it bleeds over into our world is on the freeways. When people get on the freeway, there's this intense jockeying for power and trying to get ahead of this other guy, a sense of competition, tension.
Sounds like high school.
Well, high school. Any law of the jungle dynamics you get in when you get into the difference between the animal and the jealous God is that the jealous God frequency is the law of the jungle with rules and certain kinds of civilized restrictions. The ethics of the soldier. It's like here you've got a being who's trained to kill, but they're also trained to be this total stoic, peaceful, unreactive thing, but they're trained to kill. So that's the contradiction of the jealous God realm. There's this immense peace and stillness, and at the same time, total war. There's an element called the sacred warrior, which in the Native American tradition, it exists in Tibet and also the Japanese tradition, where a warrior of peace, where you have a warrior that is not based off of conflict, but of only fighting if they have to, and working towards having a passive resolution. And so a peaceful warrior is one of those places where the jealous God realm is being bridged, and the fiery, unpredictable energy of it is being channeled into a good direction. Because there is not anything negative about any of these dimensions. The negative aspect is being trapped in the emotional state and not being able to see out of it. And if we get stuck in any emotional state, that becomes problematic, because then we get reactive and we're bouncing off against our environment. So the key is to bring a space, a spaciousness, and a gap into it. All the dimensions are inherently claustrophobic. The hell dimension is the most claustrophobic. The God dimension is the least claustrophobic. They're only claustrophobic in the sense that you're limited by your potentials. The God dimension feels like you have infinite potentials because you're creating worlds until you leave the God dimension. And when you leave the God dimension, that's vacation ending, and you suddenly realize that you not only spent all your savings, but you've maxed out all your credit cards, and you got fired because you stayed on vacation for 2 days too long. Leaving the God realms is all downhill. There is no uphill from the God realms. You've reached an apex. You're going down, even if you're going to the jealous gods. And so that's the downside of the God realm. In our culture, we tend to think of the God realm as being a liberated state, but in the Buddhist teachings, they are not. So in this, we've talked equally about jealous gods and gods. They've kind of combined into one, but I don't think we need to go much further unless anyone else has more questions or specific questions about jealous gods or gods. And then we'll talk about those then, which will be now. See you now, then.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like us and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to be notified for when we post new videos. We really would encourage you to ask any questions that you have. We would love to answer them and address them in any way possible. And we will talk to you soon. And remember, stay focused on the question.